Doc had sent Mark over there with the instructions about, as I said, no individual interviews. Well, it turned out I'd had an interview with him in 70, 2 years before that, just before the 70 NCAA meet. We sat in a classroom over at the pool over at Kuiper, and just the two of us in a room, and that was the only interview when he really talked about Munich. That was a scar in his. He'd gone there as a very cocky high school kid, talked a lot about what he was going to do, and he completely flopped. And then it was a major psychological blow to him. He wasn't used to losing, and he just spiraled down to the point where in the 200-meter butterfly, he wound up last. He was eighth in the finals of the. Well, Mark Spitz hadn't finished last in a race in his life, and that's how psychologically damaged he was at Mexico City. And in that interview, he talked about how the key thing was the very first competition he was in, the 100-meter butterfly, which he thought was his race. That was his specialty, and in a 7-year period leading up to Munich, he lost this 100-meter butterfly once, and that was in the finals at Mexico City, and that was shattering in its own. But he lost to another American, and what I think really upset him, I mean, mentally upset him, was that he sensed how happy his teammates were that he'd lost, that another American had beaten him, and it was a devastating blow to a young kid. He's a high school kid at the time, and what Doc did more than anything else was rebuild him psychologically. He got him to the point where he was ready to go, but he sensed a certain fragility and didn't want him over there talking a lot. Well, it happened. The way that the competition there works, there would be like 4 events every day, 2 or 3 men's events, 2 or 3 women's. They'd have the preliminaries in the morning, the finals in the evening. After the whole program was over, those winners would be brought in for very quick interviews, and like 3 questions. And Mark won 2 events the very first night. One was on a relay and the 200-meter butterfly. The one he'd finished last in was his first one, and Gary Hall was second. The very first event of Munich Olympics was IU went 1-2, and then he won a 3rd gold in the 200 freestyle, and then 4th one in the. He won his 4th and 5th the same night, and he won the 100 fly and one of the relays, that 4x200 relay. And after when the winners were brought in that night, he said, not to me, to the whole group, he said, I've been in here 3 times now. For these other guys on this relay team, this is their first one. He said, I'd appreciate it if you just direct your question to him. Well, that was fine, except his 5 gold medals at that point set an Olympic record right away. I mean, 4 was the previous high. Well, included in that night's was this 100-meter butterfly that he told me was such a crushing thing when he lost it. And so I went up to one of the assistant coaches afterwards. I said, look, I know that Mark's not giving interviews, but I also know that race meant a lot more to him than he's saying. And I know he's off tomorrow. Would you see if I could meet him at 10 o'clock in the village? I set up a point where he said, I can't promise anything, but I'll ask you. So I went to that point the next day, and he didn't show up. And so I thought, you know, I tried. And a guy came up to me and said, "Were you looking for Spitz?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I just saw him go in the hospital tent." So now I rushed down there, and Mark Spitz had come through this hospital tent. And it truly was just a Red Cross type hospital tent, but the celebrity of Mark Spitz, everybody had gone with him. There was nobody, when I walked in that room, there was nobody at the desk or anything. Everybody's gone. And a head popped through the tent and said, "Yeah." And I explained who I was, and I said, I lied a little. I said I had this appointment to meet Mark, and I understood he was back there. Would you see if I could meet him later today? And the guy looked a little skeptical, but he went back. and he said, "Are you Bob Hammel?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Come on back." Well, he'd been in a little thing that twisted his back a little bit, and then they had him on a stretched out with a sun lamp baking on him. He had to be there for 40 minutes. He had nothing to do for 40 minutes, so the idea of having somebody to talk to sounded good to him. So I sat back there and took notes for 40 minutes, and the only interview Mark gave, it was totally accidental, but it worked out great. I called back to here and said, "We got something pretty special." So when we were at it Sunday morning, and it was a nice beat.